stream is about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause the stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause the stream is about to start. Hi, my name is Leandro Facchinetti, and let's write some code together, shall we? What we have on the menu today is to fix a bit of a awkward situation with mouse interaction that we realized was an issue yesterday when we started implementing this effect. It was a suggestion from Juan, and it is a very simple gain slider. The most basic effect you could imagine. But the user interface of this gain slider is designed for the use here on the mixer control panel. So you can click and drag, and you can double click, and you can even hold command to adjust the gain in finer grains than just 1 dB. Very simple stuff, but it's not behaving as it should. The mouse doesn't really work all that well. You are able to click and drag, but the slider doesn't react as it should. It's not as smooth as it should. So that's what we are going to work on today. And the source of the issue is with the notion we have for these 3 lines, the notion that we have for what happens when you click and drag. Currently, it works like this. There is this notion of an interactive area, which is something that is part of our JSFX library. And in the interactive area, you can get whether it is active. The area becomes active when you hold. So you click and hold. And then there is this line. What this line is doing is it is changing the value of a slider. In this case, this slider over here, it's changing the value of that slider based on the difference between the previous position of the mouse on the previous frame and the current position of the mouse on the current frame. Then on the next line, we quantize this because we don't want the values to be all over the place. We want them to be on the right steps. So in this case, 0.1 dB if I'm holding command, and 1 dB if I'm not holding command. The problem is that this quantization is too heavy-handed. So if you don't move your mouse enough, this difference will be small. The difference between the y-coordinates of the previous frame and the current frame is going to be small. And that small difference will not register as a whole dB, let's say. So it's not going to register in this quantization process. So it is possible for me to click, hold, and drag slowly, and you'll never see a change in dB. And that's bad. That's not how a knob is supposed to work. Naturally, we only found this now and not when we first implemented this notion of clicking and dragging, because we were working on a waveform display back then. And this waveform display, you can click and drag to zoom in, but the step is so small that we never run into issues with this granularity thing, because even if you click and drag very slowly, it's still going to register as a small increment. But now we have bigger steps, bigger increments, so it doesn't work all that well. I think that the best solution for this is to have one variable that you change when you click and drag, and another variable that is the actual volume dB. In fact, we have a similar notion for instance, volume in dB and volume linear. Volume in dB is the slider that you control in the user interface, but that's not what is used by the actual audio processing. We don't want the volume in dB, we want it in the linear scale. So we have this variable volume dB that the user interacts with, and then it gets translated into volume linear using this auxiliary function from the library. So we'll do a similar notion here. We'll have a volume dB for the graphics that will eventually sync to volume dB for real. That's the intent anyway. We'll see how that pans out. So to begin with, the volume dB from the user interface needs to be synced with the slider. So I'll come here to this, which is the slider section. And anytime you change the slider, you will change this hidden variable. Like so. So now there is this new variable that is the hidden variable I'm talking about, and it will be updated here. Then, when you are doing the click and drag on these lines, we will not be affecting the volume dB, we'll be affecting the JSFX version of that. And then this quantization is going to produce the volume dB for real. So we will not be quantizing this variable directly, which means that it will hold its fractional value, and the next time we move our cursor, it is going to, well, accumulate up to the point where it gets to the next quantization level. And because we now have this behavior, I think I want to make this whole adjustment probably something like this. I am not sure, but probably these values are good. This is something that we have to calibrate by hand because these are factors that translate from coordinates on the screen, so we are talking pixels here, into dB. Pixels and dB are completely unrelated units of measurement, so we come up with arbitrary translations, these factors. Okay. Let's see if that does it. But first, let me say hello to Beats. Hey, best is to have the slider be fully smooth and only round to steps on the parameter itself. Just like you say with two different values. What do you mean by the slider be fully smooth? Do you mean that the actual slider, most of the time I expect in this case of this effect, I expect the person to not use this interface. I expect them to have the mixer control panel interface. But I suppose you're talking about this slider and make it fully smooth. So do you think we should have a finer step here instead of 0.1? I think that for dB, 0.1 is the most useful precision. I don't think that going further will be useful. And if you are on this interface, I think you can always just type stuff in. And that will be respected, I think. Yeah, I think that this will be respected anyway, so if you're really into that. But I think that 1.1 digit of precision is enough in this case. Anyway, if I am misunderstanding, then please explain again. It happens. All right, so now I'm clicking and dragging slowly, and it's still registering 1 dB, even if I drag very slowly. And if I hold Command, then yeah, it is still registering the finder steps as well. So it seems like this hidden variable approach is going to work. And over here, if I change the slider, yes, it's still going to work. Great. I wanted to make sure that this double linking would work, because we have the slider, we have this internal notion that is not quantized on the user interface, and the two need to be linked. And that's what we have here. We have a link going forward and then a link going backward. I wanted to make sure that the double linking would work. So I think that maybe this is too much. Let's try this again, or maybe something in the middle. And I don't think there is any hard and fast rules we can go by here. I think we really need to feel what is right for us. And I guess this even depends on the kind of slider we are talking about, because I imagine that this notion of interactive areas and click and drag and whatnot will expand when we start getting knobs in the user interface, which I think is something we will want to have for something like the Automixer. So I think that this, I guess I'm going to call the inertia of the button, is related to the unit of measurement, and it's related to the slider itself. Some sliders we would like to move slowly, some sliders we would like to move faster. So I guess I'm just going to play around and see what is the number that makes it feel right. And this is starting to feel right to me. Perhaps it could be a bit slower. Or maybe it's just perfect. It may be just perfect. Oh, and double clicking is not working. We need to fix that. Yeah, this is dealing with double clicks, and it is updating the DB, but it's not updating the JSFX DB. So it needs to do that as well. And I am not liking too much the fact that I have to deal with this stuff in multiple places. So perhaps we will spend some time in the future trying to come up with a more general approach for this two variable situation that we have going on. And I guess I will update the variables in this order just to mimic what's happening here. I'm not in love with the fact that I have to maintain both of these by hand on this section. Perhaps there is some sort of abstraction we can come up with. Anyway, I think that this fixes the double clicking situation. Yes, double clicking works now. Let's see what you have to say. Basically, what you just did to have one value for the slider value and one for the stepped version of it. Perfect. By the way, I don't know this scripting language, but isn't it possible to sort of decouple this whole how many pixels make the slider move thing from what kind of unit every parameter has? Okay, that answered it. Okay, yeah. The truth is that JSFX have very rudimentary user interface facilities. You can do things like draw basic shapes like squares and triangles and that sort of thing. And you can do very basic things like you can inspect what is the situation of the mouse, where the cursor is, what buttons are being pressed, and that sort of thing. But other than that, JSFX itself doesn't give you a lot. And that's on purpose, actually. The intent of the designers of JSFX was that people would come up with their own abstractions on top of JSFX. So perhaps the user interactivity in JSFX is like the low-level thing. And there are libraries like ours that come up with abstractions on top of it. So Geraint Love famously has a JSFX library for user interfaces that has the notion of layout. So you can have content panes, and you can say things like, I want this knob to be centered with respect to this area, and if you resize the area, the button stays centered. And even notions of like stacking different children in a horizontal axis, vertical axis, kind of flexbox situation if you know CSS. I think that in our library, we will have more of a low-level approach. We will give you things like what are the ideal spaces to use and that sort of thing, but I don't think I'm going to get into layout too soon. For now, I think we'll do things more manually, like we are doing here to position the text box. Anyway, I also said that I would be avoiding click and drag and sliders in the past, and here we are working on exactly that. So who knows, we may get into layout in the future. Anyway, so let's commit what we have, because I think it is a fair implementation. And I will play around with these numbers a little bit just to see if there is anything that I think would work better. If I make this value a bit smaller, I think it will behave a little better. Yeah, that's more like it. It's a subtle change, but it feels better on my hand. And then for the finer steps, I think I am also going to go with something a bit slower. So let's go with something like this. Perhaps even slower too. No. Too heavy-handed. Perhaps 3 is my number. Yeah, I think that that's perfect. Okay, and we are quantizing this in a way that when you let go of the command modifier, we are doing the coarse adjustments, it goes in steps of 1 dB, and it always quantizes to the nearest dB. I think I prefer it that way, but some people may prefer behavior where you would be at 8.7 and you would go to 9.7, 10.7, and so on. And I could do that, but I think I prefer it this way, because you're always like, you want to find the nearest dB that makes sense, and then you're like, oh, maybe I want to go half a dB down, and then you let it go. You don't want to change it again, probably. But I don't know. I'll wait and see if people have a strong preference on this. I am particular to liking whole numbers when possible, so I like that this approach gives me a whole number more easily. Yeah, I guess I would go with that. I will, however, implement the scroll, because some people like to scroll to set, especially in something like this. You may want to scroll to set the gain. Well, that is only going to make sense if we can capture the scroll here, and I think that that depends on some setting in Reaper. I turned off some settings that are on by default, because by default, if you scroll, for instance, here, it will change the volume, and if you scroll here, it will change the pen, which I guess makes sense. Some people will like to use the scroll wheel as sort of a controller, so to speak, right? Some people have this, even I think they're called surface control surfaces. They have like this piece of hardware that is like one slider so that it can slide with an actual slider. And some people will use the mouse here as sort of pseudo slider kind of thing. So perhaps it would be nice if we could make this work here as well. But it depends on whether it is possible at all to capture this scroll over here. It may depend on settings, it may be completely impossible, I don't know. But one thing I do know is that the scroll is possible to capture on this window. So I will make that work. And yeah, that makes sense. Guys, I was thinking in terms of classes and stuff, because in a Juice project, I've never have something about the units in the code of the slider behavior, and that makes it easier. Fair enough. Yeah, in Juice, you have higher level constructs. And we can, and maybe we will come up with some notion, some more abstract notion of knobs. That's what I was referring to earlier, where I'm not in love with this whole low-level stuff we are doing here. So maybe we will come up with some sort of abstraction, maybe even copying some Juice abstraction to encapsulate this logic, and then you wouldn't have to worry about these kinds of constants. But I maintain that depending on the unit of measurement, you would like to calibrate this differently. So maybe it makes sense to have a default, but it makes sense to let the user adjust this. And in this context, when I say the user, I mean the programmer using the library. Anyway, Bo is here. Hello, Bo. It's great to see you here. I hope you're doing well. Let's do the scroll wheel. We have something to do scroll. Yeah. And we'll do the vertical wheel, which is this. And it will be similar to that. It will be very similar to that. So if the area is active, well, the area doesn't have to be active, but we need to be scrolling on top of the area. So I think there is another field on this data structure, hover. Yes, that one. Hover is, of course, you are with your cursor on top of the area. So if you are with your cursor on top of the area and you're scrolling, then we'll do some of these. The fine adjustment situation I want to keep. Then we have this, which should only happen if you are in this situation. Otherwise, we'll look at the scroll wheel. With this. And again, we will need this notion of scaling, because this is in the unit of, it's not even pixels this time, because it's not movement across the screen, it's just the amount of scrolling that happened. So I guess it's in degrees. So it's a value in degrees that we need to translate to dB. Completely unrelated, so we'll come up with arbitrary factors. And to begin with, I guess I would just leave the same factors, but we'll see if they work at all. And then I think that the rest is okay. Yeah, scrolling is working, but it's working in reverse, I think. Well, it's difficult to say because the truth is that people sometimes even map the scroll wheel in reverse in macOS. I guess on Windows that's not a thing that much. But when I'm scrolling up, it is going down in value. I feel that this is reversed. Yeah, I feel that this is reversed. So I'm going to reverse this. I will add that like so. And now it should be going in the right direction. Yeah, when I scroll up, it goes up in value. And when I hold Command and scroll, it should be doing fine adjustments, but it's not. If I click, then I hold Command and I scroll and it's doing fine adjustments. But if I don't click, then I guess the window does not capture the modifier. I guess this is just one of those things that comes with Reaper. There's nothing I can do about it. Anyway, what I can do about something is that this is moving too fast. So this needs to be a smaller value. And this is probably moving too fast as well. So it will be an even smaller value. And now this is too small of a value. This is good. It feels good to me. Or maybe let's make it. No. Was this a good value after all? Is this doing anything? I don't know, the scroll wheel in macOS feels so weird to me. On Windows, it's much more consistent with my intuition. I think because of inertia and whatnot, it just feels weird to me. I think I would personally click and drag on this one. Sometimes it feels like it's going too fast and then it's going too slow. I don't know. Guess I will land on this value and stop fiddling with it. Now let's play around with the fine adjustments. And that is too slow. So I want to make this number bigger. Yeah, it's still a bit awkward, but I think it is what it is. Now let's try this on the MCP. And I remember having explored this before, and I think that the setting in Reaper will affect this, but yeah, if I click, then it captures the scroll wheel, but it does not capture the command modifier. But you can always click on it and then scroll. But if your focus is elsewhere, then it's going to scroll this whole pane. Guess it is what it is. And how about the TCP? Oh, on the TCP, you cannot, even clicking, you cannot do scrolling here. Just does not work. At least with the settings I have. Well, whatever. It is what it is. And then I have a to-do that I can remove. Scroll wheel. Done. Okay. Looking good. I guess we'll address these to do because then there will be nothing left. I think that this will be a complete effect, and I hope not to have to come back to it because it seems like it's doing its thing, and I love software that just does its thing. That's a simple idea, actually. We do need to call the slider function to recompute the volume linear based on the volume dB that has been modified here. So what I can do is have a variable that will be something like is slider needed, or yeah, something like that. To begin with, it will be false. Then if we got in here or in there, it becomes true, and only call slider if necessary. And we can test that this is working because we will be using the user interface to affect the slider, and it will be actually working. That's how we detect that it's doing something and that this change is correct. So to test this, let's put my microphone through the effect and change the gain using the user interface. And yes, it is affecting the gain on the way out. So this is correct. And with that, check this out. We have a full effect without a single to-do or fix me or anything. This is fully functional. Beautiful. And now it feels much better on the hands, and I think it fulfills the request by Juan. I hope that Juan likes this one. And we will be returning to the Automixer, but before we do, let's go through the exercise of updating an effect using REAPER. I will add a folder to the workspace that is my GitHub repository for REAPER stuff, link to which is in the description if you want to go there. I don't think we changed anything with the library, but let's remember to copy that as well. So this is the library. This is our effect. Then let's scroll down, go under effects and copy. Oh, should have remembered to remove the originals first. Let's remove these two. And let's rename those two. Then, yeah, we didn't change anything in the library. These are the changes we implemented today. We commit and push this guy, then go into index.xml. I maintain my index.xml by hand. There is a script in Ruby that manages this for you. I never use it. Just do it by hand. It's not too hard. It seems like I released the first version of this. Hang on, no, do I have to? Does this even make sense? What the heck? Yesterday, I released the volume effect with version 1.0 being the waveform and version 1.1 being version 1.0 of the effect. That's just completely messed up. Let's fix this real quick. And then let's get the commit identifier for that. Put it here and there. And this should exist. It does. This should exist. It does. So we are good to go. Now let's actually get into REAPER. And I'll synchronize all my packages. It's going to download a lot of stuff, but anyway, let's see if my new plugin shows up there. Meanwhile, I will be opening my Automixer because we are getting back to the Automixer. Juan, I think that your effect is done. If you disagree, then let me know what you would like to change, because I think it's in pretty good shape. This is the library. This is the Automixer. And in here, we should find ourselves. And here we are. And we should find this twice. As soon as scan for new plugins, yeah, we find it twice. One of them being this, which is the version installed by REAPER, and this is the development version. And I will drop it on a track, and I will increase the gain, I will lower the gain. You can see that the meters are reflecting that. I can do fine adjustments, and it will look great on the MCP. Lovely, lovely. That's what I'm talking about. And now you can go there in the link in the description and install this for yourself. Let's get back to the Automixer. There is one thing that I would like to work on, and that is a bit tricky. I don't know if you'll be able to make the whole thing in this session, but we can start. Let's first drop the Automixer on a track, and I will show you what I mean. All right, the user interface is here. I didn't remember that we had this lovely user interface, and it is here, and it's looking great. Oh, I was gonna work on something else, but let's just fix this visualization, this red line. Because I think that that may be less of a tricky thing to work on. So we have a tone generator and we have our voice here. So you can see the line going up and down, and you can see in light gray the original sine wave, and then in white is the auto-mixed sine wave taking into account my voice. And similarly, you can see my voice being turned down because of the sine wave over there. And what I don't like about this red line is that when it goes up and down too quickly, it gets a bit glitchy. So that's what we're going to fix. Of course, it will be in the Automixer, and it will be on this line graph situation. So we need to get into the library because the problem really is there. And it's specifically on this function. Let's see the way that we are currently drawing that line. We are using this line with these coordinates. This used to work because when we first implemented the waveform display, which is displaying these lovely waveforms, that worked with the notion of columns. So each column represented a slice of time. So maybe 200 milliseconds made up one column in the waveform display or something like that. And we just drew each column next to one another. But now we are trying to draw a continuous line. So I think what we need to do is to remember the position of the previous point and draw a line between the previous point and the current point. So we'll be looping, but we'll be keeping the previous point from the previous loop, from the previous iteration of the loop. We'll be keeping that around, and we'll be drawing a line between them. In fact, we will have to just rethink about this whole drawing situation, but it won't be too hard, hopefully. So these points are a list of the points we want to draw. Then point main is the horizontal position. And we are going from right to left when drawing. There is also a vertical mode, but let's not worry about it. We are going from right to left. So to begin with, before we even get into the loop, we want our cursor to be at the last point. So let's make our cursor be there. I was trying to think of a way of avoiding these lines and repeating them, but I think it's unavoidable. Yeah, I'll just copy and paste for now. And instead of point, I'll call this the point previous. And I will also need this line. And the offset in this case is just -1. That is correct. Then we take point previous in all these situations. Yeah, this repetition does not make me happy. But anyway, I think it will work. So we are now putting our point previous as the end to the right of everything, because we are drawing from right to left. So this seems about right for me. Then we don't want to loop over each pixel. We want to loop over all of them -1, because the first one we have already collected. You know what? I think I just thought of a way to avoid this repetition and deal with this all at once. It is a bit of a hack, but I think it will be better than having to repeat all of this and think about the boundaries and everything. It goes like this. I'll say that point previous to begin with is undefined. And I only do the drawing if point previous is different from undefined. Like so. And then at the end, I'll say that point previous is equal to point. So it means that the first time we go around this loop, this code will run just the same. We didn't have to repeat it. And this drawing will not happen because to begin with, point previous is undefined. But then we will remember the previous point. So the next time we go around, the previous point will be just there available to us. Perfect. And we didn't have to repeat any code. Excellent. Excellent. And I guess I'll put this here. So this ends up being the x coordinate, and this ends up being the y coordinate, I guess. And I think we are actually interested not in the point, but in the point cross, because that's what we'll need to actually draw stuff. So let's rename point previous to point previous cross, or point cross previous. Like that. Okay, that will do. And we are doing a conditional in the loop that we could have avoided by biting the bullet and writing the thing the other way, that way that I started to write. We are doing an extra conditional in the loop. Whatever, it's the user interface. It's not like we're dropping samples. So now let's think about where we want to draw the line from and to. I think we want to draw the line from the X position is, I guess, something like this. It's not perfect that I wrote it this way, but we are just taking the start of the line is going to be one to the right, and the end of the line is going to be one to the left. I don't know. I don't know if this is the best way of writing it. But anyway, the Y position will be taking in account not the point cross, but the previous one. And this stroke width has no business being here. I think that will do it, but it will be a line of a single pixel. It will not have any stroke width. Yeah, it seems to be drawing something, which is always good news. And yes, it is going up and down, and you can see that now the line is completely continuous. And I would maybe say that this line is already thick enough, so we don't necessarily need to worry about it too much. But hey, let's make it 2 pixels wide. Which is the stroke width from here. So let's respect that. To make this happen, I will write another loop. This will not be fast. And I don't mean implementation-wise, I mean in terms of performance when running this in real time. How about the CPU so far? Are we keeping things in check? Yes, 0.2% CPU per instance is completely acceptable. Is this instance taking out 0.2? It's taking more. Yeah, I don't know why. The tone generator seems to make things slower. Maybe it has to do with normalization, or I guess denormalization. I don't know what that's about. And I was going to write this loop by hand, but I think we have already a notion of Bezier curves that implements this for us. Yeah, it's this. Okay, this probably is going to look better. Yeah, This is exactly what I wanted. I think it looks okay. Oh, now that we have this, let's see the look ahead. I kept saying for hundreds of streams at this point that the reason why I wanted to do a JSFX library that would help you see what is happening to the audio. Well, that was the intent, right? I wanted to do a JSFX library that helped developers build effects that would show what's happening to the audio. And now we can see the look ahead. So you can see that when I start my sentences, like here, it is picking up. So it's probably cutting the first few syllables. But if I put some look ahead, maybe that's too much. But if I put some look ahead, then you can see that it is increasing the gain. When I start speaking, the gain is already increased. And yes, the gray waveform is incorrect because the gray waveform is not in sync. But pay attention to the white waveform and to the curve. You see that when I start speaking, the red line will already be all the way up. So it will be all the way ready to get my first sentences. And because we implemented, or my first syllables, I should say, and because we implemented this look ahead the right way, we are not cutting the ends of sentences either. See, it's after I stop speaking that the gain goes down. So now we can see all of that abstract stuff that I talked about. And if we make the look ahead even bigger, perhaps something like this, I think it will work even better. So yeah, it seems like it's going all the way up and it's going all the way down in a way that I like. And it is easy to tune this because I can see the waveforms. Excellent. This is super exciting. Let's go over the changes we made, and perhaps we will try to address this offset between the waveforms that is happening because of the look ahead. Lovely. It even subsumes this. Awesome. Right. Let's see what you have to say. Tail is here. Hi, you are doing all this in JSFX, right? Then I don't think the FX CPU usage will show this. Correct. You are absolutely right. The way that I see the CPU for audio is over here, and the way that I see the CPU for user interface is by looking at it, especially when I'm streaming, because my computer is already under a heavy load by encoding the stream. So if it looks okay to me, if it looks smooth, then it is okay. That's how I measured it. And if I put it on the MCP, then it is going to run at a higher frame rate. It's going to run at 60 frames per second now. And if it's still looking okay, if it's still scrolling by just fine, then I'm happy. And my computer is not struggling at all. So that's how I measure performance of the user interface. But you are absolutely right in your comment. And by the way, hello. Thanks for joining me and for the smart comments as always. Right, so next, let's try to sync the waveforms going in and out. This needs to be done on the sample block. And the problem is I am pushing the sample on the inputs over here. And then I am pushing the sample for the outputs waveform over there. The problem is that this sample of course, has changed because we have processed. But here we are doing some buffering, right? We are adding some delay to the waveform. And I think that the look ahead buffer, it's just the original sample. We haven't changed that yet. So really what we want to do is at this point, we want to push some stuff from this buffer. Yeah, I think that that's what we need to do. So let's grab the code that is pushing inputs into the waveform display. That's this code right here. And let's bring it down. Or rather, I think I will keep it here, but I will do this check. Do I have a look ahead samples of 0? If so, just push as usual. Otherwise, we'll do some special funky business. And now I am in the audio thread in a loop adding a conditional. So probably not the best in terms of performance, but we'll see. Let's grab the part that goes into the look ahead buffer, just like that. And that's what we want to push. So it really is a one-liner in both cases. I will remove the extra parentheses. Well, in that case, I can extract that. Like so. It may be off by 1. It may be off by 1. I don't think it is, but it may be off by 1. But if it's off by 1, no one will notice. So whatever. Let's see if this works. First, again, I will show the problem. You can see that the gray waveform is falling behind the white waveform. Now for the supposedly fixed version, the waveforms are in sync again. And hang on, I have a look ahead already? That doesn't seem right. Okay, the waveforms are in sync. Let's add a look ahead. And the waveforms are still in sync. Now let's add an Automixer to the other track. Oh, that's why the look ahead was already ahead, because of this other track and global syncing of parameters. Whatever. We have a look ahead, and we have the waveforms in sync in the visualization. And there you have it. Bam, just like that. And if you want things to be really crazy, you can have a huge look ahead of 500 milliseconds. And that does not seem right to me. We learned that if your RMS window is too long, it breaks. I don't know why. But hey, now check this out. Way before I start speaking, you can see the ramp already going up, and it only goes down after I stopped speaking by a whole lot. I hope that people will be happy with this. I think that this looks great. All right. What have we changed? Just this? That was easy. So, with that, we are going to wrap up. Tomorrow, I will not be streaming, but on Friday, I will be at IDDQD Sound. It's Aria's channel. And we will be talking about mastering. So make sure that you go there and watch us streaming together on Friday. On Monday, I expect to be back to the Automixer. And I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to work on, but I think it will be a notion of normalization. That was the little tricky thing I thought I was going to work on when I opened the Automixer. So it has to do with making sure that if the Automixer strength is all the way down, it is not attenuating anything. And you can see the gray is bigger than the white. So right now it is attenuating. And that's an issue with normalization that we'll get into. And it will be tricky and complicated as always. This line in essence is over here at half, but it should be over here at 1. That's the essence of it. So I think that that's what's up on Monday. But we'll see. So make sure to go to IDDQD Sound on Friday. We'll be talking about mastering, and we will have Darren from Mastering in the Box as a guest. That's the plan anyway. And on Monday, more JSFX, more Automixer. Thank you to Tail and Bo and Beats and Ben for joining me on the chat. Thank you to everyone else who is watching this, and I see you on Friday. Bye. Thank you for watching the stream. You know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And soon we'll all be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.